summun, bukmun, umyun. And now the situation's worse. It's not just that they're blind of basira, they're deaf. What's the disadvantage of being deaf? You can't hear someone who's trying to help you. You're in the middle of the desert, lost. There's no light, that's gone, your light is gone. At least you can hear someone. At least you can hear someone. You can't even hear them. Bukmun, mute, you can't speak. If you're lost in the desert, you can't hear someone that's calling you. At least you can cry, so they can hear you. You're bukmun, you're mute, you can't even be heard yourself. Their ability to even ask for guidance has been stripped from them. They're that devoid. And then the third problem, you can't hear, you can't be heard, and you can't see. Umyun. And by the way, Allah took their light away, right? In the previous ayah? If you take light there literally, it means they don't have any light around them. So if they're in the middle of the dark, not only are they blind, they can't even be seen. So they can't hear and they can't be heard, they can't see and they can't be seen. They're completely abandoned. Which is why Allah says, tarakahum, He abandoned them. Fi dhulumatin, la yubsirun. فَهُمْ لَا يَرْجِعُونَ. Then they're not going to return. The question then arises, what are they returning to? Return means you were somewhere and you went away from it. Well, the fire was lit and they were right there. Then their light was taken away and they wandered off. So if they're not going to return back to what? That fire that they lit. Return back to the messenger and the Quran. They're not going to be able to come back. فَهُمْ لَا يَرْجِعُونَ. أَوْ كَصَيِّبٍ مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ. And by the way, this idea of bringing people back to the original, Allah says later on in the same surah, يُخْرِجُهُم مِّنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. He left them people were in the darknesses, but He pulls them out of darknesses into light. This is the reverse. They were in the light and they went to darknesses. They don't deserve to come back now. It's the other way around this time. Yarhamukallah. أَوْ كَصَيِّبٍ مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ. Or like sayyib. Sayyib could mean dark clouds. Some ulama say sayyib means al-mataru shadid. Really, really heavy rain. Al-mataru shadid. Min as-sama, that comes from the sky. This parable, the next parable that's being given, it should be compared with the last parable. In the dark of the desert, it gets very cold. And what's comforting to you? A fire, not just because it brings light, but it also brings warmth, aba'a. So there's an attribute of revelation that's highlighted in the previous example, that it's comforting. That it's a source of not only for you to find your way, but it's also comforting because it provides you heat. But then the next thing that's mentioned is actually something intense and hard. Revelation is two things. On the one side, it's soft and it's comforting, and on the other side, it's also intense and tough and powerful and scary. It can be both of those things. So the other side of the coin, the other side of revelation is highlighted in the next parable. Okay? أَوْ كَصَيِّبٍ مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ. Or like intense rain from the sky, فِيهِ ظُلُمَاتٌ, in which there are multiple shades of darkness, وَرَعْدٌ, and in that's heavy rain there's also thunder. The thunder is also scary. وَبَرْقٌ, and there's lightning. Light is usually good, but barq is scary. Other light is appreciated, but lightning is a scary thing. So now this is, let me tell you what's been said about this. فَجَعَلَ دِينَ الْإِسْلَامِ لَهُمْ مَثَلًا فِيمَا يَنَالُهُمْ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالشَّدَائِدِ. Allah made this example for them, made heavy rain and thunder and lightning an example for them because of what will come to them from the revelation that is intense and scary. So it scares them, and the warnings of the Quran, they're like that. And now they're caught in the middle of those warnings. يَجْعَلُونَ أَصَابِعَهُمْ فِي آذَانِهِمْ مِنَ الصَّوَاعِقِ. They stick their fingers into their ears, مِنَ الصَّوَاعِقِ, because of the loud explosions. كُلُّ عَذَابٍ مُهْلِكٍ فَهُوَ صَاعِقَةٌ أو فَهِيَ صَاعِقَةٌ. Every destructive punishment is called صَاعِقَةٌ. Other than that, صَاعِقَةٌ is الصوت الشديد من الرعدة يسقط معها قطعة من النار. It's a heavy sound from the sky along which you get like a such a loud thunder that it sounds like an explosion. Sometimes thunder is like this loud sound, but like a roar. Other times thunder is like an explosion. That loud one that's like deafening, kids wake up and start crying, that kind of thunder is called sa'iqa, a really loud explosion. And they keep happening. In this scene, you're again out in the dark, it's raining heavy, and the thunder is like explosively loud. It was ra'ad before, but now it's sawa'iq. It's so loud that you have to stick your fingers in your ear because you're afraid you're going to die. This explosion is going to come like lightning and hit you. Right? حذر الموت, out of fear of death. الحذر تأهب وإعداد كأنه يفاجأ. You know, حذر is used when someone's careful and they're really like watching every step that they take as though they're about to be surprise attacked. كأنه يفاجأ. He'll be attacked surprisingly, you know. This is hadar. Hadar al-maut, like they're just really scared for their life. They're truly afraid of death in the middle of this storm. What is this ayah talking about? Allah Azza wa Jalla says the hypocrite, when he hears the warnings of the Quran, it's too depressing for him. Something in his heart says, it's coming. He'd rather not hear that. So he blocks it all out. You're sitting with him, you're trying to listen to some Quran or something about the Akhirah. Can we change that? Can we listen to something else, please? Can we change the subject? That's too depressing. I don't want to talk about this. They'd rather stick their fingers in their ear. You know, sticking your fingers in your ear is a good defense against explosive sounds? Against death, you think? Is a logical defense? If lightning's going to strike, your fingers in your ear is going to help you or no? Allah describes that not only have they left the means to intellect, hearing, seeing, they've lost their intellect too. They've become illogical now. Wallahu muhitun bil kafirin, and Allah has completely encircled disbelievers. Allah has completely fenced them off. They can't escape this. Allah calls them not even munafiqeen, He calls them kafirin. Because as far as Allah is concerned, He can judge what's inside the heart. And inside the heart, if there's not conviction, there can only be kufr. There's nothing in between. On the outside, we call them munafiq. On the inside, Allah knows, so He can call them what they are. Kafir. On Judgment Day, they're not going to be raised as munafiq, they're going to be raised as kafir. By the way, interestingly, these parables, later on in Quran we'll learn, لِمَا حَشَرْتَنِي أَعْمَى وَقَدْ كُنْتُ بَصِيرًا. My master, how come you raised me blind? I used to be able to see. كَذَلِكَ أَتَتْكَ آيَاتُنَا. That's how our ayat came to you. You passed over them, you didn't care for them. فَذَلِكَ الْيَوْمَ تُنْسَى. And today you are forgotten. Here He said you're left in the desert. Judgment Day He said you're forgotten. He's raised blind. Here's just a parable, and then in reality, this person is raised blind. May Allah not make us from them. Other scholars argue about this ayah, and I'll move on, that these loud thunderous sounds should be compared with tough revelation, or anything that is said that is critical, because that is what Allah describes them, the hypocrites with, يَحْسَبُونَ كُلَّ صَيْحَةٍ عَلَيْهِمْ. So they make muqarana between this ayah, they make comparison between this ayah and that statement in Surah Al-Munafiqun. يَكَادُ الْبَرْقُ يَخْطَفُ أَبْصَارَهُم. It is almost as though the lightning is going to snatch their eyes. It's so bright and brilliant, the lightning, that it almost takes their eyesight away. So there was sticking fingers in your ear, so you refused to listen, and now the blindness is mentioned in a different way. The light of revelation is so strong that they're like blinded by it. So it's a different kind of blindness. كُلَّمَا أَضَاءَ لَهُمْ مَشَوْا فِيهِ. Every time it lights up for them, they walk a little bit in it. Also means when it eases up for them. So it's not like they don't follow revelation at all, they follow it when convenient. وَإِذَا أَظْلَمَ عَلَيْهِمْ. When it falls dark upon them again, قَامُوا, they're left standing. Every time hardship comes, they're left standing. وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَذَهَبَ بِسَمْعِهِمْ وَأَبْصَارِهِم. Had Allah wanted, He could have taken their ability to hear away and their ability to see away. إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. Certainly Allah is in complete control over all things. You know, in the previous example, Allah did take their seeing and their hearing away. صُمٌّ بُكْمٌ عُمْيٌ, yes? In this case, at least they're walking a little bit. It implies they may have some hope. Allah didn't say He took it away, He said if Allah wanted, He could have taken it away. He could have taken it away. So there's an implication that maybe these guys should get their act together. Maybe they haven't committed themselves to revelation as they should have, but that doesn't mean it's too late for them. That means they can still get their act together. Ya ayyuhan nas, people, all of humanity, u'budu rabbakum. Enslave yourselves to your master. Complete ibadah. Ibadah means enslave. You can't do partial slavery. You can't be a slave part-time. If once you call yourself a slave, it's a full-time gig. Like, never in history was somebody slaving part-time, like I'm slave on weekends. You don't do that. It doesn't exist. So when ibadah is mentioned, u'budu rabbakum, by the way, u'budu, the command form is from ya'budu. Ya'budu, the present tense. But the past tense could either be abada or abuda. There are two past tenses, abada ya'budu or abuda ya'budu. Abada ya'budu means to worship. Abuda ya'budu means to be a slave. The present tense is used so it can go back to either one of them. In other words, worship your master and become slaves of your master. Those are two distinct things. A lot of people worship Allah but don't accept Him as master, don't become His slaves. Allah is expecting us to worship Him as His slaves. U'budu rabbakum alladhi khalaqakum. Now enter into complete slavery. Why this ayah over here? Because the previous ayat are about people who pretended to go into slavery, went into slavery partially, not wholly. So now at the end of it all, the call is made once again from the top. Let's take it from the beginning. الَّذِي خَلَقَكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. The one who created you, all of you, and the one He created all those who came before you, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you may be able to protect yourselves. In the last two examples, are there attempts of people to protect themselves? Both parables, there was someone left in the desert by themselves, and they're blind, deaf, and they can't speak, right? They're mute. And the next example, they're in the middle of a storm, and they're completely surrounded. Allah says, you really want to protect yourself? Here's what you need to do. Enslave yourself to your master. It's coming back to where this surah began with, Hudan lil muttaqeen, la'allakum tattaqun. Hopefully you'll be able to protect yourselves this way. الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُمُ الْأَرْضَ فِرَاشًا. The one who made the earth for you as a firash, meaning as a flooring. Firash is wit'an, or wita'an. Wita'an means, in Arabic, something that is laid down, put down, beat down, humbled. ثُمَّ يَجْعَلَهَا حَزَنَةً غَلِيظًا, or لَمْ يَجْعَلَهَا حَزَنَةً غَلِيظًا, implying that He didn't make the earth unstable and rough, that we couldn't walk on its terrain. It would hurt us every time we walked on it. He laid it down for us. وَالسَّمَاءَ بِنَاءً, and He made the sky as a ceiling. Meaning the earth and the sky are supposed to be a means of our protection. You know, a floor and a ceiling are where you feel safe. You're inside the confines of your home. Now understand how it's tied to the parables. The first parable was about trouble on the earth. You're left on the earth with no light. The second parable was about trouble from the sky. And Allah says, originally, if you were my slaves, the earth was supposed to be humble for you. The sky was supposed to be a ceiling for you. فَأَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً, and He sent water down from the sky. Now water was coming down in the parable too, but it was coming down as part of destruction. But He says, no, originally I meant water for you to come down from the sky. فَأَخْرَجَ بِهِ مِنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ, then He extracted from it all kinds of fruits. The sky and the earth work together so that you can eat. رِزْقًا لَكُمْ, as provision for all of you. فَلَا تَجْعَلُوا لِلَّهِ أَنْدَادًا, then don't make competitors with Allah. Don't set up other competitors. Don't let your greed, your ego, your pride, idols, outside idols, inside idols, don't let them be competitors with Allah. وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ, while you in fact, you're the ones that know very, very well. So this is contrast with doubt. You have no doubt inside you. You know it, and you're still not committing yourself. By the way, hypocrisy, it should be mentioned, or just a lack of iman in a person, is rooted in two kinds of problems. This is discussed in more detail in Surah Al-Asr, but here I'll just refer to it briefly. There's either emotional, psychological kinds of problems in iman, or there are intellectual problems. Either you have temptations, greed, jealousy is a temptation, ego is a temptation, these kinds of things, emotions. They get in the way of your faith. Or you're genuinely not convinced. You're not so sure if it's the truth. That's an intellectual kind of problem. Allah Azza wa Jal here, when He says, وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ, it's the intellectual side. You know very well. Your knowledge is there. You know this is the truth. Then how are you letting your temptations and your emotions take you away? Subhanallah. وَإِن كُنْتُمْ فِي رَيْبٍ مِمَّا نَزَّلْنَا عَلَىٰ عَبْدِنَا, and if in fact you've been in any kind of doubt. The discussion began with doubt. There's no doubt whatsoever. But if it's the case that you don't know, because it said, وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ, you do know. But if it's the case that you don't know, you're in any kind of doubt, مِمَّا نَزَّلْنَا عَلَىٰ عَبْدِنَا, in anything that we've sent down, from whatever we've sent down upon our slave, فَأْتُوا بِسُورَةٍ, then bring a surah, مِن مِثْلِهِ, anything like it, anything remotely like it. I'll translate it this way, anything remotely like the Quran, min mithlihi, not just mithlahu. or suratin mithlihi, min mithlihi. Bring anything even close. Go ahead. This is mentioned as a Madani ayah, and I say this with a lot of grief. We don't understand how the prophets did da'wah. The vast majority of us. We don't understand it. It shows in how we try to do da'wah ourselves. We try to give people pamphlets that say, hey, you don't believe? Produce a surah like it. Allah didn't say that in the beginning of Revelation. This is Madani Quran. This is way down the road. Even in Meccan Quran, when it does occur, it occurs later Meccan Quran. Later Meccan Quran. The original call of the Quran is to decency, to your own conscience, to wake up and understand you have a purpose in life, to look around you and see evil for what it really is. These are the things human beings are called to. When they've reached the point of no return, and they've become completely adamant in their adamant in their kufr, then Allah says, fine, go ahead, make your own surah. Make a surah like it. This is basically Allah inviting them to come up with their own destruction. If you're going to compete with what Allah revealed, you're sealing your own deal. This is a curse actually from Allah, this challenge. Go ahead, bring a surah like it if you're in any doubt. وَدْعُوا شُهَدَاءَكُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Bring your witnesses. Any other than Allah that you have, if in fact that you're truthful. Shahada and sidq are put in the same ayah. Testimony and truth. Testimony and truth. Originally your own conscience is supposed to testify to the truth. But you, since you've killed your conscience, go find some other witnesses then. If in fact you have your own version of the truth. In kuntum sadiqeen. فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا. Then if it's the case that you didn't do so. لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا, past tense. You didn't do so. Has it been the case then that you haven't been able to do so thus far? وَلَن تَفْعَلُوا, and you won't be able to do so. So Allah is commenting on previous failures. The first slap, لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا. The next slap, لَن تَفْعَلُوا. And He says, okay, I've let you know that you haven't been able to do so thus far, and you won't be able to. فَاتَّقُوا النَّارِ. Then go ahead and protect yourselves from the fire. Before it was taqwa by itself. Allah didn't mention the maf'ul bihi of taqwa. He didn't say yattaquna ittaqullaha. He said la'allakum tattaqun. Hudan lil muttaqeen. Muttaqina, and what's the maf'ul? What's the object of the verb? They protect themselves. The question is, protect themselves from what? I said it could be protecting yourself from punishment, disappointment of Allah, protecting yourself from, losing your decency, etc., etc. It could be any number of things. But these guys are at the bottom now. The only thing left to protect themselves from now is what? The fire. That's the minimum. That's the lowest standard. Go ahead, protect yourself from the fire. Whose fuel, التي وقودها, whose fuel is going to be الناس والحجارة, people and stones. Stones that people worship. And stones, when they burn, they make lava. It's a hotter kind of flame than any other fuel. And people and the idols they worshipped are going to be burning together. وَعِدَّتْ لِلْكَافِرِينَ. Also, hijara is interesting because later on in this surah we'll learn people's hearts became hard as stone. Right? And now those hard hearts are burning like stone. It's wild. It's been prepared for those who disbelieve and for the ungrateful.